So some things about reliability: following through on your promises, actually performing meeting next steps. You know, that formal process at the end of the meeting where it's like, okay, we have our action items. Like, who's going to take this one? How about actually acting on your action items? That would be a cool thing. Responding to emails, doing what you say you're going to do. If you're not reliable and you just like space on that stuff, people are going to remember it. Show up on time. I mean, this stuff, you're probably looking at the screen and you're being like, yeah, okay, like this is obvious, of course. Well, it is obvious, but like I think we all need to be reminded on occasion to get to meetings on time. Like, how many times have you been on a conference call with somebody? Like for us, it's usually a client, and you're sitting around the Polycom, and you're all there in the room, and then the client gets on. It's like 3 out of 4 people are on the call. And they're like, oh, Joe's not here yet. Could we hold a couple minutes? And you're like, yeah, cool. They put you on hold, the music comes on, you talk. They come back and they're like, Joe's still not here 5 minutes later, but why don't we go ahead and start? So you go ahead and start, and you present your designs, you talk about your project plan, you do whatever, and then you hear, boop, Joe. And then Joe's there. It's like, oh, can we go back and like fill Joe in on everything we just talked about? Like, how many times does that happen to you? Like, it's incredibly annoying. I don't care if it's your company or your client, and these are things you have to look out for. Show up on time. And if it's your company, make sure that if there's a lot of technology involved with your meeting or whatever it is, show up early. Because I have spent years of my life in the beginning of meetings waiting to get Skype working. Never miss a deadline. If there's anything that is scripture at HappyCog, it's that. We do not miss deadlines, period. And set your own personal deadlines realistically. Don't promise something in 3 days and deliver in 5. Promise something in a week and deliver in 3. Anticipate needs. So here's a simple example. We have a dishwasher in the office. We never had one before. We moved in Philly to a brand new office, and we have one. And that thing gets packed every day. And one of our employees was an early arriver, and the first thing she would do would be to put down her bag, go to the dishwasher, and empty it. And she did that because she knew that if she didn't, somebody else would have to do it. And she's anticipating somebody else's needs by saving them 10 minutes by doing it herself. It's the same thing with the trash. I know you've all done this, but you walk up to a trash can and it's overflowing with trash, and you put something there and you tiptoe away like, I hope nobody sees me do this. And somebody else is going to have to empty the trash, so just do it. Save them the time. If you get a Photoshop document where the layers are all screwed up and they're not named properly, take 10 minutes and organize it so the next person doesn't. Anticipate people's needs. It may not immediately come back to you, or you may not be praised for doing that sort of thing, but people are going to find out it's you. Trust me. Put in extra time. Now, I'm not, we work 40 hours plus or minus a week, but there's going to be times when, like that instance I was talking about before with that sports periodical, where we're going to have to put in the extra effort and time outside of your regular workday to put that stuff together. And that's part of it. It doesn't have to be written in your offer letter. It doesn't have to be in an employment contract. That's an expectation. So if it's the norm, you might want to take a look at the reasons for that. But there are going to be occasions where that needs to happen. And call in sick when you're sick. I know we've all called in sick at previous jobs when we're not sick, and we go to a ball game and do a Ferris Bueller thing or whatever we do. The way that we've actually short-circuited this at HappyCog is that we just have PTO now, paid time off. So it's a bank. And you use that time for sick days, personal days, vacation days, training days, whatever. It's your bucket of time to use however you want to use it. So it kind of short-circuits the whole, calling in sick on a beautiful 80-degree day, surprise, surprise. It's kind of like those news stories that you see on your local news where somebody's on disability and they're out back and shoveling ditches in their backyard. Like, it's pretty easy to spot when people aren't sick. So if you can figure out a way to implement a policy where that is not a sticking point in your office, that's a good idea. 57% of salaried full-time employees take sick days when they're not. So this is an actual Slack conversation I had with Anthony again. I'm going to point at him. This was on Easter Sunday of this year. I was actually in the UK preparing this talk for the first time. And I reached out to Anthony. I can't create these stupid little custom short URLs yet on my own, which is pretty pitiful. So I reached out to Anthony. I was like, hey, Ant, can you create a custom cog.gd URL for this link? It should go to this. Thanks. What was it? Like 20 minutes later, he responds, done. I was like, thank you. Happy Easter. Like the guy, like this is 8:02 p.m. He's probably sitting down with his family, ready for dinner or something, and he takes the 5 minutes that he knows that would help me to do that. Like, this is the kind of stuff that sticks with your boss, and it's tiny, tiny stuff. But cumulatively, it makes a huge difference. Be professional. So there are formal tenets of professionalism that some people have created. One in particular is the Code of Professional Conduct by the Academy of Design Professionals. Andy Rutledge is the curator of this. I don't know if you guys know Andy. He's got some strong opinions on what professionalism is, so I strongly recommend that you go out and check that out. And there's some interesting things there, actually. And then I think potentially, well, with this thing, there's a series of canons and ethical standards and rules. Maybe a more pedestrian definition of this could be a professional is someone who understands and represents the organization's best interests, even when that means sacrificing personal preferences. So that reliability thing that I just talked about with Anthony on Easter Sunday, he took time for me. Sometimes we get gigs at Happy Cog that don't please everyone. We'll get asked to do a pitch at a higher educational institution for the 15th time in a row. It's like, do we have to? Well, yeah. We try to mix it up, but if we're working to make a profit and we're working to stay in business and we're working to pay people, sometimes you got to bite the bullet and work on something that you might not want to. We're not talking about taking people away from their families and sacrificing, everything. We're just talking about opportunities to kind of put your personal preferences aside. Some days you may be needed and you have a dinner reservation and you have to cancel your dinner reservation. It's not the norm, but sometimes it happens. So there's other things that influence professionalism. One is the way you dress. You learned this lesson once. We had a client one time down at Wall Street, and one of our folks a long time ago showed up with jeans like this, and everybody's sitting in the office with almost like tuxedos on. And I think our general rule with respect to this is if we have a meeting in our office, we'll dress as we dress, like it's our house, so to speak. And clients can come to us and they can dress however what's most comfortable for them. But if you're going into a client environment, make sure you find out what that environment is and show the respect for that organization and dress the part. You may have to go out and buy some clothes. Your body language. So I don't know how many of you were in Laura's session this morning, but she and I talk about the same thing here. There is a woman named Amy Cuddy from Harvard, and she did a TED Talk, and I'll put the link up in a second, where she talks about poses and then how you position your body. And here are some examples. The top row is considered the power pose. And the bottom row is considered the kind of the less power pose, I guess you'd say. But people who display the power pose actually have spikes in testosterone, which is the power hormone. And people who tend to slouch and sit passively or kind of feebishly have spikes in cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So it's interesting. It actually causes physiological changes in your body. But the way you sit in a meeting says a lot about you as a professional. You know, if you're like head on your hand, almost falling asleep, or always talking like this, like you should have a pipe, you know, like you know everything, you might be putting out the wrong vibe. So pay close attention to your body language, and here's the link if you want to see that TED Talk. It's really good. Your tone of voice. People react to pleasant, warm vocal tones. Whether or not you're getting that from me right now it's debatable, but you know, people like personality when you talk to them, and like emoticons are being used in text messages because people are missing the emotion in typing things into a little box. You know, hypnosis relies on tone of voice exclusively, pretty much. If you're gonna speak like a robot on the phone, maybe your client is kind of robotic and you choose to respond in kind, that's not going to get you very far. Like, elevate the conversation. Be excited about what you present. If you worked a long time on designs and you're presenting them to a client, have a little emotion about it. You know, like, get excited about it. Sell them on it. Your hygiene. Now, I'm not talking about combing hair and deodorant and all that stuff. I'm talking about, like, just making sure you don't get your coworkers sick. We had a VP of technology who almost had a holster of Purell with him at all times. Like, he would just clean himself up all the time. If you're making your coworkers sick, it's not good for your team. It's not good for your company. It's just cascades. Sometimes it's hard, especially if you have kids. One time we had a wise guy freelancer working with us who ate lunch on our silverware that we had in our kitchen. He was taking all the plates and putting them in his desk drawer, and they were piling up. And I went in one weekend and I opened it up, and they were all just there with food all over them and everything. I'm like, you gotta be kidding. And he totally did it on purpose just to get a rise out of me. But, I mean, come on. Your manners. All right, I know it's tempting, but if you go to a meeting in the morning at a client site, or if you have a meeting and you're inviting people in, and you've got one of those continental breakfast spreads with danishes and donuts and all of that stuff, stay away from it. Let the clients have all that stuff. But if you have a plate of food and then you're starting to like shove your face, and then it comes to you to talk, and everybody has to sit there and wait for you to finish eating, like, where's the manners in that? We've actually had situations before as well when we've gone to pitch, and the client, prospective client on the other side, would just be either texting the entire time or actually having phone calls during our meeting. And there was one moment in particular where I stopped the meeting and I said, listen, if this is a bad time for you, we're happy to come back. Just say the word. And they're like, no, continue. That's fine. The phones went away for like 10 minutes, and then they came back out. And people were taking calls, spinning their chairs around and like talking. And I said, listen, we're not the partner for you. Thank you for your time. We packed up and left. One thing you got to know is that the prospect that you're talking to is the client that you're going to have. So look out for those signals and be sure that, you know, you're conveying your manners, and the client that you're going to be working with is respectful of manners as well. Take initiative. Get a drink here for a second. Hang on. So, some time ago, we had some slight challenges with the way we launched our projects. They didn't work so well. We used to do our kickoff meetings remotely, over the phone, going off of a script. This was like in 2006. Paul's like, it really happened. Where we like ask a question, and the client would either have an answer and like provide like 2 sentences, or there'd be an awkward pause or a yes or no answer. And then we go down through the entire list, trying to spur some natural conversation, but it just wasn't working. And there was one meeting in particular where this kickoff was happening, and I was sitting down the hallway, and it wasn't part of the meeting, but when it wrapped up, I came down and I said, we're not doing this anymore. This does not work. This is awful. It's just like awkward. It's embarrassing. It's like we're not getting really what we need from the client. And so one of our employees actually came up to me after that, and he said, I got it. You got what? He said, no, I'm going to take this and fix it. Like, this will not be a problem anymore. And lo and behold, he did. So this is more indicative of what we do for kickoff meetings. We spend just as much time out of our seats as we do in them. Every kickoff is a collaborative classroom exercise. There's lots of interaction. There's lots of idea sharing. There's lots of sticky notes on the wall. And what this gets us is a lot of things. Number one, it creates engagement on both sides. We're both engaged. Face-to-face meetings, no duh, are much more engaging than doing things over the phone. We build rapport with the client. Each side got to work with people they might not ordinarily get to meet or work with. Like, we have developers that are talking with CEOs, solving problems or doing sketches. Like, that would be impossible the other way. And we established a sense of fun. Like I said before, like, we get out of our chairs, we work on exercises together, we end up joking and laughing with each other. We immediately establish a sense of camaraderie. And when you're working on a project with a client, you're both in it for the same reasons. You both want it to be successful. Like, if it comes out awful for you, it's going to come out awful for the client. So why not be on the same team? Why not build up that expectation of fun and engagement? So by taking the initiative and taking something that's broken and fixing it, you could be a company like this with a client services division or wing and a product design wing, and then boom, all of a sudden you have a process design practice that you didn't have before because you're reinventing your own process, and you figured out a way to spin it into a service offering that you didn't have before. And if you're an employee in a company and you're looking at the org chart and there's not a lot of boxes above you that you think you could go to, build out a wing of the house and sit in the top of that one. You could totally do that. The opportunity is there. Just present the idea. The guy who developed this is Kevin Hoffman, and he spends a lot of time talking about this stuff. He wrote about it in A List Apart, about improving the kickoff meeting process. And he followed up with a website, which is called Good Kickoff Meetings. You can get to it here. There's all kinds of great resources here, exercises you can do, suggestions. So definitely check that stuff out. Be respectful. Now, I'm not talking about respecting me as an employer. I think I need to earn that. I'm really talking about respecting the workplace and your colleagues. And there are essentially 5 rules that I think you should probably remember. Number 1 is the golden rule, which I think we all know: simply treat each other as you would want to be treated yourself. Self-explanatory. The it's a small world rule, which means the bubble in which you exist is a lot smaller than you think it is. And if you view everybody you encounter as someday being your potential boss, it's probably not a bad thing, because it can happen. I've seen it happen before. The hidden value rule, like, we're pretty quick to formulate first impressions of people, but look for the good in everyone. You might not see it immediately, but it's there. Give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Take the time to find out more about people. The everyone is special rule, recognize that everyone comes from a different background, different place. They bring different experiences to the table. Some come from money. Some had to work for every single penny they ever had. Some people have degrees. Some people don't. If you're working on a project for a particular client in industry that's like insurance or something, I happen to work in insurance for 6 years, and I might not have been in on that meeting, but if you're not asking those questions and involving the people with that work experience and bringing their perspective to the table, you're missing out. We always say, like, everybody at Happy Cog is a designer. You just have to ask the right questions and get them involved at the right times. So there's a few idiosyncrasies that I have, too, that I will add that shape my definition of work ethic. I really can't contain them, so I tend to write about them. And I guess a tip that I usually offer my employees is that, and I offer to you guys, is that know what your boss's idiosyncrasies are. Whether or not you agree with them, just know what they are, because they're probably writing about them. And if you know what they are, you can work in a way that is harmonious for everybody. This talk was spurred by this article, which actually Jay Cornelius helped me with in the editing process. Jay gave a talk called Shut Up, Get to Work. I think that was the title. That's certainly what we were chanting. But which similar philosophy about work ethic. And so that's why I'm talking about it today. Here's a few other idiosyncrasies I have. Work ethic is proofreading everything. So there's some simple tools. There's spelling and grammar checkers. How many of you guys use these tools? Like it's baked into every word processor. Like there's a lot of inline, browser plugins and things like that help you. But you got to be careful because spell checkers and won't catch misspellings that form another valid word and stuff like that. And grammar checkers sometimes work with a limited amount of rules. But they're a good place to start. Here's a few of them. Hemingway app, Grammarly. Grammarly, actually, I just tried the other day for the first time, and it puts a little G in every text box that you type into and offers grammatical suggestions. It's kind of slick. I have to do this. I'm sorry. I have to do this. Please bear with me. There, and there. Contraction, owned by a group, and a place. Your and your. Possessive and contraction of you are. It's. This one's actually a little trickier than you think it is. First one is the possessive. There's no apostrophe. And the second one is a contraction of it is. Peak, peak, and peak. Quick look, sharp point or pinnacle, provoke or investigate. Loose and lose. My business partner Greg Story messes this up all the time. It drives me insane. Loose is like change in your pocket, and lose is losing change in your pocket. Same thing. A lot. First one is not a word. Don't use it. Second one is a vast number of things. Third one is to set aside or to allocate. 2 and 2, I think this is like just kind of fat fingering stuff when you type it on your phone. You know the difference there. Whose and whose. Contraction and possessive case of who. This one, I don't know if you guys know this trick. It's pretty simple, but me and I. If you say, they're going to go with John and I, take out the word John and say, they're going to go with I. That makes no sense. If you say, they're going to go with John and I, you take out, or you say, they're going to go with John and me, take out John, they're going to go with me, makes sense. That's how you know which one to use. Lightning and lightning drives me insane too. Lightning is what people do to their hair. Lightning is electricity from the heavens. Also, I bet you didn't know that people who write better make more money. Surprise, surprise. They're better at their jobs and get paid more, according to Grammarly. Here's I know it's hard to see, but they reviewed 448 freelancer profiles for spelling, grammar, and punctuation errors. I know that's not a huge sample, but it's more of a sample than what I've taken, which is exactly 0 sample. So, writers and translators, 10.1 errors per 100 words. Surprise, surprise, they're like writers and editors. But IT and programming, 19.3 errors. We got some work to do. And then they've figured out some magic numbers as to specific lines of work. The fewer errors, the more money you make. There could be lots of explanations for these correlations. Likely, it's just that people with stronger writing skills pay more attention to detail, and then they apply that throughout their entire work existence. One more thing. I have to do this. Does anybody know what this period of time signifies? Daylight savings time. No, daylight saving time. That's what it's called. If you're setting up meetings and you're using these, you're wrong, because we're in it right now, and it's this. This is silly stuff. But if you focus on stuff to this level, all the other stuff is going to be easy, trust me. On November 2nd, I'm going to send out my annual tweet where I say, all of you who have been using EST for the past 6 months are now correct again. Idiosyncrasy 2, work ethic is leading by example. The reason I'm standing in front of you and the reason I've been speaking a lot this year is because at HappyCog we expect our practitioners to do the same. And I wasn't doing it. So I put myself on the speaking circuit and trying to spread our reach and talk about stuff like spelling. But I mean, I'm trying to lead by example, so here I am. Also, I was never subject to our review process at HappyCog. All of our employees were, except for me and my business partner, Greg Story. So I subjected myself to that process and came to this conclusion. This article can be found at that link. And I found out that I can't let go. I make snap decisions. I'm spending less time with people. I can get defensive. I'm inconsistent. I handle disappointment poorly. Some people might even be afraid of me, and that floored me. It's like I'm the most friendly guy on the planet. No, well, what's interesting is that as your company grows, you don't have the physical capability, unless you really work at it, to spend time with people, and they don't know you as well as they knew you when you were 8 people. And so there's a lot of, one of our employees at one time only knew that I was a web designer from my LinkedIn page. They never knew that I actually designed websites at one point in time. So if you haven't gone through this process and you're in a managerial position or whatever, I strongly suggest you do it because it's pretty amazing. Essentially, I'm this guy. So, another idiosyncrasy, work ethic is working efficiently and not working more. If you can't get it done in 8 hours, you might not be working efficiently. And, face it, we all face a lot of interruptions throughout the day. Here's some interesting things. According to a study, the average person encounters 87 interruptions per day. It takes an average of 23 minutes to get back on task. 18% of the time, the task is not revisited. So here's some ideas. Switch off email, have fewer meetings, and get to work early. Now, the first two you may not have a lot of control over because that's kind of like a corporate mandate. That's got to be something that's adopted by the whole organization. But the last one, you're totally in control of. And it's pretty amazing the amount of time or the amount of stuff that you can get done before everybody else shows up. So think about it. All right, so work ethic is easy when you're inspired like Dave Grohl. So I have to share this with you because it resonated with me pretty strongly.
With where the industry is headed, the idea of making money off a record really changing, what would you tell 4 guys in a garage that had a good batch of songs? What would you tell them to do today?
Go play live. Just play live. I don't understand the industry. I don't understand where music is headed. I don't really understand technology. I just know that when you walk into a club and you see a band that blows you away, you are going to follow that band. You're going to either buy their CD or you're going to find them online or you're going to see them the next time they come to play. You don't have to stand in line at the song contest on TV to become a fucking popular musician. Fuck product placement and fucking labels and A&R people and all that bullshit. It doesn't fucking matter. I swear to God. It doesn't matter. And if you back that up with the idea that just playing those great songs in your great live band is enough reward for you, then you're fucking set. But you've got to be badass. You just have to be really good. It's the other things that make up for your musical inability. As a drummer, I never felt like I am going to be on the cover of Modern Drummer magazine because I'm the best fucking drummer in the world. I just knew that if you put me on stage without a fucking PA or floor monitors in a small club, that I would beat the fucking shit out of my drums so much that people would go, God damn, did you see that fucking drummer? Whoa. And I'd walk away from every show like, there you go. I just beat the fucking piss out of those things, and people saw it. And that was great. So at the end of the show, I was a successful musician because I had achieved what I wanted to achieve.
Love that. So, inspiration makes work not feel like work. I used to have a job before Happy Cog that I was not thrilled about. And I used to get up in the morning and take the train into town, and I'd see the building, and I'd immediately get that adrenaline rush, and I'd be like, oh, I don't want to be here. And even before that, like on Sunday nights, I would watch 60 Minutes. And as soon as I saw Mike Wallace's face on 60 Minutes, I had this moment of like terror where I'd realize, shit, tomorrow is work. Like I associated his face with the fact that I had to get up and go to work the next day. I used to call that my Mike Wallace moment. Don't have a Mike Wallace moment. Thank you, everybody.